Why don't you just tell us a bit about, first of all, tell us about your brand, first of all. What's your brand?
Are we starting?
Yeah.
We started.
Sure.
I have no warning. What is my brand? Nas means people in Arabic. Nas Daily and Nas.io are the two products we built. And the whole point for why I exist and we exist is to bring people together. That is our mission statement. We bring people together through media and technology. That is the Nas brand.
Why did you start it?
Well, I grew up my whole life seeing people brought apart as an Israeli-Palestinian. I wanted my work and my life to be the opposite of what I grew up seeing, and therefore bring people together. That's why.
And you started doing this on social media, on YouTube?
Not YouTube. I boycotted YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How
I
come?
decided to take a bet on Facebook.
Ah, yeah.
And I made 1 minute short videos on Facebook. This is 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And Facebook videos blew up, then Instagram videos, then TikTok videos. So I'm really not a YouTuber.
No. But you took that plunge with another job or with a main job that you were doing, or as a student? When did you start to do it?
I was a software. So I grew up in Israel. I
Uh-huh.
went to Harvard. I graduated. I worked for 2 years as a software engineer. April 8th, 2016, I quit my job. April 9th, 2016, I started Nas Daily in Kenya.
Why? How come you can quit your job and just start
Hey, you could do the same thing. You should quit your LBC job.
Yeah, a lot of people would want that. So why did you do it? What inspired you to take that plunge? Because that's a big call.
Well, I think the calling of every human is to figure out how can they work for themselves and how can they not sell their time for money doing things that they're not excited by or they're not good at. And that's really where I was when I had a job. So I just thought life was too short to spend it doing data entry.
A lot of people would try and argue that content creation, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, is kind of like the beginning of the end of capitalism. We've created a system where people can earn by just doing silly 1 minute videos, etc., and become mega wealthy. What would you say?
Wait, how is that the end of capitalism? This is the manifestation of capitalism. How does this end capitalism?
This is the beginning of a way of earning money that sees people out of the 9 to 5 that they hate,
absolutely.
out of the commute that they hate.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the first beginning where you can literally earn money by traveling. And I see a world, by the way, and actually I built a whole platform on this called Nas.io. That's what I spend most of my time doing. It's a platform to help you work for yourself and make a business online. I see a world where half of society is making their own business online without needing a 9 to 5. A 9 to 5 reminds me of the time we went to the factory, where you had to be at the factory line. The world, the future of work is going to look very, very different.
So you think that's dying?
Absolutely.
The clock in, clock out, 9 to 5 thing is over.
I mean, if I try to introduce a clock in, clock out at my company, I'll be fired as a CEO. So you cannot do it for the workers, right? So eventually you'll not be able to even hire people because they just want to work for themselves. So you basically use them for a limited amount of time as a service, as a contractor, and then they go and do whatever they want. And I think that's a great future, to be honest.
Can I come back to where you started? You said that you saw in your whole life people pulled apart, given the region you were born in, the fact that you are Israeli-Palestinian. You are bridging two sides of a very bitter divide. I noticed in one of your videos you talked about the end of the war in Gaza, and you say that the best thing to happen to Palestinians is the defeat of the terrorists.
Yes.
A lot of people would, maybe in that part of the world, or maybe who have family there or whatever, take issue with the description of the word terrorists.
I love that question. Yeah, I absolutely love that question. And this question reminds me of this sort of Western view on the Middle East, which is, you may not see it as somebody sitting in London, but by far the worst thing for a Palestinian is not Israel. It is our fellow countrymen. It's the other Palestinian with an AK-47. Another Palestinian with an AK-47, aka Hamas, is so dangerous for the average Palestinian because it becomes almost like a thug society. It's like whoever governs is the one with the weapon. And you can't build a society like that. And that's really, unfortunately, the situation in Gaza. Before the war, after the war, during the war, even today. So yes, absolutely they're terrorists. And I'm not the one saying this just because I have an Israeli citizenship. People will say that in Saudi Arabia. They are terrorists. The Hamas people are terrorists. The Emiratis will tell you the same thing. Hamas are terrorists. I think it's important that we put enough pressure on the people with guns like Hamas that it's not cool. You're not a resistance fighter. You're by definition a terrorist because you're instilling fear in people without any rule of law.
Even though the argument would be, I guess, that they're resisting oppression, they're resisting occupation, and this is an expression of the anger that is felt in Gaza.
Yeah, I think that argument works on the Western audience. It's a bullshit argument. Excuse my words. I happen to be also Palestinian, come from Palestinian parents for hundreds of years, even before Israel existed. And I can tell you that that's not how resistance looks like. And those people should never govern. They should never be in any position of govern. This is absolutely, with no hesitation, Iranian proxy terrorism.
I don't know.
How do people not see it? That's
well, I
what
don't know
wonder.
what you see of London and the marches that have existed here for several years now. I personally, we've obviously talked about this on the program a heck of a lot. I have been shocked by the amount of and the openness of the support for a terrorist organisation in by British people in Britain.
Me and you, brother. Me and you.
You too?
Of course, I was shocked. I mean, I get the Western idea of it, which is, oh, these poor people, let's support them because they don't know any better. It's almost racist. These protests are almost racist, and you can quote me on this, and you can cancel me on this. It doesn't really matter. Why are they racist? Because they have this soft bigotry of low expectations. We do not expect much from the Palestinian, so yeah. They can kill, they can do whatever they want, they can do October 7th, and, they're always oppressed, and therefore they can do no wrong. I think that's misguided. I am Palestinian, and I'm telling you, we have done something wrong. We cannot pursue terrorism, or we cannot pursue this armed resistance as a way to get independence. And there is a world where we need two states for two people that are equally indigenous. That's the future we should build. Not for, we want one state, Palestine, 1948 lands. That's just never going to happen.
A lot of people say what's been happening is a genocide.
I think genocide is a very emotional, non-scientific word. If you believe what's happening is a genocide, then it's a genocide. I don't really care what you define it as. And if you don't believe it's a genocide, then we don't believe it's a genocide. I remember my first time going to Armenia, and everybody in Armenia said that was Armenian genocide. And then everybody in Turkey said that was not genocide. I think you'll see this debate for the next hundreds of years. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But it can be settled, of course. It can be settled by, judges ruling on it in the highest courts in the world.
Yeah, I used to believe that. And then I really dug deep into the United Nations, and I realized it is the least effective bureaucracy I've ever seen in my life. And there is no way I would trust the United Nations with anything. So I think in the last 2 years, I have lost trust in institutions and governments. And my faith is fully in the private sector. But it's not in the public sector. And you've done government, you know this.
Yeah, sure. We talk about that a lot as well. The other thing that people, of course, they say about Israel, and again, your experience is very telling in this, is that it is an apartheid state. Did you experience that? You experienced that apartheid growing up in Israel?
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. Again, I'm not trying here to defend Israel. I'll tell you who thinks it's an apartheid state. Let's understand them better. Am I allowed to say the B word, the bullshit?
Yeah, we can.
You can beep
do
it,
business
yeah?
with that.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I forgot. I forgot. I'm so sorry. I thought it was just you and I, not audiences.
No, don't worry about it.
If you believe that Israel and Palestine is one country, then in your eyes, I see how you think it's apartheid, because there's a wall separating the Palestinians and the Israelis. If you view Israel and Palestine as two countries, then it's not apartheid. It's just a border. Like every country deserves to have a border. I view it as two states for two people, and therefore it is not apartheid. Inside Israel, there is no place I cannot go to as a Palestinian Arab Muslim. I can, theoretically get any job. I have vote that is equal to the prime minister. I can go wherever, do whatever. It is not like South Africa's apartheid. The people who say it's apartheid is the people who don't believe in two states.
You've cried out during a lot of this for a better understanding of the context, the history, the religious battles that have taken place in that region for the last God knows how many thousands of years.
Yeah.
Do you think the expression of Israel as an apartheid state, or it being a genocide based on how people feel, is actually an expression of that lack of understanding?
Absolutely. I'm always shocked at how many people, when I tell them I'm Israeli, but I'm Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, they were like, cannot compute. It's like, what? I thought it's only Jewish. Like, people need to really dig deeper into this. Like, I studied this for 33 years, my entire existence. I feel like I know I am more qualified than the average Swedish person or the average immigrant in Birmingham. I know this conflict a lot more. And therefore, my opinion should matter more than the average opinion of just another person who happens to be Muslim and who says, Muslim equals I'm with Palestine, I'm against Israel. It should not be this simple. We're not tribal.
Do you think that view comes from somewhere else? That the expression of that form of one-sidism comes from whether it's forms of extremism that exist in the Middle East that have been brought into the UK?
I don't know enough about what's going on in the UK. I know you guys have a lot of problems. Unfortunately, I'm not following them. I have enough on my own.
Sure.
But I do know that this is not about Israel and Palestine, unfortunately. I look at an average person in Bangladesh and I'm like, why do you care? Why should you care? Why does an Hindu Indian care about this conflict? Because for them, it's actually a religious conflict. It's Hinduism versus Islam. It's Islam versus Judaism. It's more of religious lines. The amount of times I get a message that says, you're a Muslim, you're supposed to stand with Muslims. We really need to stand with the truth, not with people of our fellow faith. And so I think it's gone to the religious side. And then for the woke left Europeans, it's almost like a feel-good kind of thing. I must always be with the weaker side just because it feels good to support the weaker side. But unfortunately, and I tell you this as my family is one of the weaker side, we have to do our own reforms to be able to thrive. Palestine needs. There's 2 Palestines now. Do you know this? Okay, well, the average person doesn't know this. Yeah. There's 2 Palestines. Yeah. Which Palestine do you support, the West Bank or the Gaza? Because it's 2 different governments. Yeah. They also kill each other. Yeah. But the average person in the UK does not know this.
I think you've spoken before about extremism, particularly around the Muslim Brotherhood, and the potential that kind of, and you talked about Iranian backed extremism, that has been brought into the United Kingdom.
Absolutely.
That it doesn't wash in Arab countries. It has no place. They're a designated terror group in some of these countries,
Absolutely.
But not here.
British people, UK people, you are getting some of the most dangerous immigrants in the world. Not all immigrants, but you're getting some of the most dangerous people.
Dangerous how?
Because they're coming in the UK, setting it as a base to create essentially media to destabilize the Middle East, right? It's dangerous because of the ideas being promoted. Here they can thrive because you have democracy and freedom of speech. That's great. But these ideas cannot thrive in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in some of these stable countries. And so you're getting the biggest destabilizing forces to live in the UK and try to destabilize the Middle East.
And the ideas are what? Sharia?
Well, the ideas are first of all, Israel and Palestine, okay? There should be no peace with Israelis. There should be one state. We should continue the fight, continue the resistance. What resistance? 80% to 90% of the Palestinians just want to live in peace. Sure. And they do not mind having an Israeli state next to them. The Palestinians, us, were suffering while somebody's sitting in London or Qatar and telling us that you must continue the resistance. What if we just want to live in peace? So this is one of the ideas that affects me deeply. And, you have many other ideas by God knows how many.
And we've let that happen. UK's
let it happen under the guise of freedom of speech, which is great. Freedom of speech is great. Here's the way I think. I think democracy works. It's amazing. We love democracy. I mean, Israel has democracy too. It works unless there is a force that is more powerful than democracy. What is more powerful than democracy and rule of law? Religion. So if your religion is more important to you than rule of law and democracy, which is the case for many of the Muslim Brotherhood people, then that is dangerous. And you notice every time we introduce democracy in the Middle East, the first person to win is Muslim Brotherhood or an Islamic extremist person. It happened in Gaza. It happened in Egypt. If you allow it, it'll happen in Lebanon. If you allow it, it'll happen in the West Bank. So we have to be careful when we say democracy is great, but democracy is great when you believe that is the number one most important thing before religion.